Welcome back to another PCBH Corner. And before we jump into the topic, we wanted to give some shout outs to some people that really helped inspire this topic. One is Meredith Williamson, who we actually talked about doing a proposal at CFHA with a panel about this exact topic. So I want to give her a shout out, and then also shout out, hopefully see a lot of people at San Antonio next year.
We're doing the topic.
We are doing the topic. Well, doing the topic as far as submitted the proposal.
Oh, we haven't gotten accepted yet.
We haven't gotten. I think you're thinking of APA. APA, we got the acceptance, not CFHA just yet. But yes, hopefully it will be.
Hopefully it'll be accepted.
Yeah. I like Bridget's real big assumption there. It's like, of course it's going to get accepted. I like that.
Well, it's a great topic,
it's a great topic.
When we were asked to be on that, and I read the abstract, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and then more recent than in our PCBH Implementer Lab, we've had some really great candid conversations about this exact topic. So really a lot of gratitude for everybody that prompted it. And the idea being about acknowledging and discussing what we call the scars that we all wear. And meaning about particularly as a BHC for sure, and then this is more geared towards maybe directors and leaders of programs, about these scars that and I love what you actually said the other day, where you were like, scars indicate that they're healed, right? Like sometimes these are open wounds that are still kind of bleeding in a lot of ways. But these things that when we go to conferences, and this is a big value both of ours of trying to keep it real about these things. When we go to conferences, we talk about the good things, and we should talk about the good things, and we celebrate those things. But this is also something we should talk about, and probably should celebrate as well.
Yeah, and there's so many things that are coming together, from the PCBH lab to being invited to that panel and the abstract for that, to our conversation with Neftali, where with the publishing of the book that he edited, the PCBH Implementer Guide Part 2.
Perfect. I'm glad you said that too. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and so things are coming together where it's like, of course, when we present, we're going to have tidy, easy to digest slides. Like, that's the intent of it. But just because it's easy to digest conceptually doesn't mean that going and doing it is easy. And
well said.
And so, I agree with the sentiment that I had said. It's like, it would be nice if it was scars, because scars implied that it healed up. And, walking out with a lot of, open wounds. And one of the things that really stuck with me, so Neftali, I hope that you're watching this. Again, we never know when we say something, even if it's something that you've said before or you agree with. Sometimes when somebody else says it, it just sticks in your brain in a certain way.
Amen.
He said, primary care is messy. It's messy. So of course, all of it is messy. If you're doing implementation into primary care, and if at baseline primary care is messy, of course it's going to be messy.
I wonder, it makes me think about Jeff Ryder's quote too, primary care is where good ideas go to die. And that almost like reflects that messiness that's there. So my mind goes a couple different ways with this corner of one asking, what are the scars, or what are some of the themes that we have noticed, and maybe we can, one, validate other people if they're experiencing that, and also maybe give like a heads up, like if you're starting a program or something, like this might be something that you experience. And then also very clearly and appropriately, and not to try to diminish the scars, but then also talking about like the healing that can come. Like what did we do to try to heal from that?
I know that's not fair to say that they're all open wounds.
Well, I mean, what's funny, even this morning, I had some open wounds about having to deal with some things. And I do think, even though, we swear and we joke.
Why are you bringing that up?
Well, the reason being is that I think oftentimes, I think Chris Hunter was talking about this too, people that, make videos and give presentations, and in his case, write books, they can come off as, or they can be seen as almost not human.
Overly polished, maybe.
Overly polished, like this doesn't impact you, you don't feel these things.
Right.
And it couldn't be anything but that.
Yeah, because I think in order to effectively do this work, you have to care a lot. And the more you care, obviously, as we know, you're getting closer to values, the more stuff is going to hurt. And
it wouldn't hurt if it wasn't connected.
Exactly. And I think, when the question you had asked about maybe we can validate or reveal and validate some scars that we've had that you all might be experiencing out there. Why don't we do you want to just jump in? How do you...
Do you want to... I have some I was just going to write down if you go, but I could definitely...
I'll just throw a couple of thoughts out there. I'd say one is I underestimated the difficulty from an emotional perspective. So I thought that when we went into this, I thought the biggest challenges that we would face, that I would face, would be knowledge acquisition of like, man, how am I going to learn all the different aspects of how we get reimbursed and the electronic health record and the reports and the metrics, and how am I going to learn all that? And of course, that's very, very, very important. But that's all stuff that you can systematically learn. If you've made it this far through graduate school and this far, then you obviously have...
Well, capable, talented, smart people. Right?
Yeah. I did not anticipate the level of emotional impact that it would have.
Is there anything that your mind goes to that remembers about like the specific emotional kind of things that really did come up, like the situations that really did activate those emotions?
Oh yeah. So I would think the biggest one was trying to do everything right, and then the idea, and how we kind of approach things, that you do things the right way with integrity and hard work, and that will always have a 100% return. And I still do think that doing things the right way, having integrity and working hard still do produce really good things. But it was hard for me to understand that you might do everything right on paper and you still might get some outcomes. You might still have somebody from your team who doesn't buy in, or you weren't able to connect with them, or they decide to leave, or maybe something else happens where somebody just has to like move, or sometimes things happen to where you can't meet your productivity, like helping your team meet that productivity because of something that was happening in their life. And so like there's all these things that are out of your control, and you think that when you're the director or you're the boss and you put this stuff together, well, if I just work hard and I do the right thing, it has a 1-to-1 ratio, and it doesn't.
Building off of that, that hard work and integrity, my mind just always had the belief or the assumption that it's like people will see that. It will be acknowledged isn't the right word, but it will. What would the right word be? It will,
honored or taken into account?
Be taken into account. It will be honored. It will ripple out, and like people will see and value this. And it's something that I've learned that people seeing and valuing it might mean something completely different than what I'm expecting people to see and value what that means.
And I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I just want to come full circle for like why it was so hard emotionally. Because I was taking it all very personal. I was personalizing like a lot, and it's because we cared, and I cared, you cared, we cared a lot. But it was overly personalizing, and so that was actually a skill set that I had to learn, was how to not overly personalize it, and then how to see things more from other people's lenses, which I think is the point that you're about to get to. And then also not personalizing like difficult things happening in
Context,
the world.
Right? Yeah. Context happens. And that great, what is it from, is it Adam Grant, the task versus relation?
Yeah.
Being able to decipher those two things, that was a very, very difficult skill.
If someone disagrees with you, is it task or is it relational? Sometimes you disagree on a concept in integrated care, but it feels relational, but it's not relational. So relational versus task.
Yeah, and I think, again, this goes to this related thing. That was such a difficult thing. You almost get like punched in the face with that a little bit, that trying to see what other people's perspectives are. And this is why when we go back to that, our implementers lab, that we really focused on, you need to know your organization's values and what guides them and all the things that they're believing in. Because, when we would be doing all these great things, or what our minds would say, these great things, or we would be promoting them, it almost seemed like it didn't even matter to some people. Like, it was just like, oh, that's cool, like, great, And the reason why it didn't matter, though, was probably a lot of different things, but one of the main things was, like, we weren't thinking about what their perspective was and how this aligned with what they were trying to really promote in their vision. And that was a tough thing. That was absolutely a scar that is still held in a lot of ways, about having to recognize, it's like, hey, we're doing everything we can. Like, how is this not uptaken more? How is this not sold more? Like, how are you still asking these questions and not allowing us to expand? The one specific scar that is a deep one is like, how can you not allow us to hire another BHC? And how many times do we have to ask you about hiring another BHC? That's a tough one.
So would yours be that, so you feel like you have the over-personalization too? Or,
for sure.
Or learning another skill set of that, being a boss or being a leader isn't about just what you know or about your vision. It's about getting buy-in.
Yeah.
Did you hold any, not like resentment, but just kind of like embarrassment about, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't learn more about other people?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's another thing, almost like if there was the initial scar, it was like the scar that was built on top of that scar. Now, because as you said, it's like, how would I not have known to do that? Like, of course I should have known to do that.
Yeah, like the more you learn, then you're like, oh my gosh.
Like,
so you could be really hard on your previous self. So that's another fun one.
That's like, again, it's like adding the salt or the different things that just makes the scar even hurt more as we build up this metaphor, which we probably don't need to build up the metaphor anymore. But no, for sure. And I think that over-personalization, what's interesting about it, my mind believes, is that most of the things that are scars are the over-personalization. It's our inability to almost like step back and to see that this is a task, not a relational kind of
people
aspect.
aren't like out there to get you.
Correct. And that is such a tough thing to...
Because it's so personal.
It's so... You care, right? You care about it so much. And then, and I think this is a thing why we're passionate about talking about this, and almost where maybe we should do it every single time now that we do give a presentation, is that maybe come to one of our presentations and you're just fired up, right? You're just like, yeah, I'm going to take this back and it's going to be great. And then you go back and then maybe it's not uptaken and people put up roadblocks, and then, like, again, it would be almost impossible to not over-personalize that there's something that person just doesn't like or whatever, like it's personal. It would be tough to do. But I think when I look back on the scars that I have, it is a lot of that. When I think back to
what else you have on there?
Just simple things that now are simple, that are laughable. It's like places to sit. About that's a scar that we over-personalized. I feel like when we look back on that, of being like, why are we getting pushback from people about we want to sit in medical pods? That we want to see patients in the exam room.
So why is it overly personal now looking at it? Because you realize that you just didn't know enough about their context?
Correct, 100%. I didn't realize what they were seeing and what they were thinking was, again, I still think it was wrong, right? And we won that argument. But it wasn't because they didn't like me. It wasn't because they didn't believe in behavioral health or something like that. It was something that they just didn't see.
Maybe you were a victim of your own success, because for you, I know you had such a clear vision of what it looked like. But if you're an everyday nurse or an everyday medical assistant, or you've been a physician practicing for 20 years, you're just doing your thing. And then you have somebody coming in who has a very clear vision of what everything needs to have happen. And they're like, okay, like, what is happening? Like, what are you doing here? And then that person is just absorbing that, like, scar after scar. But I don't think the answer is only to stop personalizing it. I do think that it's difficult because a lot of organizations say they hire you for it. So it's a little bit gaslighting. It is, it's a little bit gaslighting.
From the onset.
Because it's like...
We want you to do this.
Yeah, we want you to come here. We want you to build this. We want you to grow this. We want this more than anything. And then you come there, but what you're not really taking into account is just because, there's executives or directors who have this, like, really clear vision, doesn't mean that they clearly made a clear vision and cast that vision to their team exactly about, like, what it would look like. So it feels like, wait, why am I getting so much pushback on
You
where to sit? You asked me to do this.
Yeah, it's a really great point about the gaslighting there. And you know what's interesting? I'm thinking back to the conversation I had with the trainees. God bless our trainees, and then also like any new BHCs into our system, because everybody, people will bring up ideas, and you and I, we're just very passionate people. And we want to rumble with people. We appreciate rumbling. We like being candid. We like having uncomfortable conversations. And I often think probably they're like, oh my God, I didn't even think I didn't know what I was stepping into, right? Like I didn't know I was like stepping into a hornet's nest. But,
so you're saying if they were to bring up something like, whoa, why don't we just do blah blah blah,
right.
And then you're over there like,
what the?
You're like. This exists for this very specific thing. Like you don't even, the hornet's nest. Like you don't even know what went through to have this happen this way.
And that's something I wrote down that I think has been really difficult. Is we've struggled with how much can we teach overtly, like how much can we have people watch videos and maybe observe and have one-on-ones with us, have didactics. How much can we teach versus how much it needs to be experienced for some of the things that we talk about to make sense. And that's a scar that honestly gets opened every year with trainees that we come into. I think it's healed up a lot more, so it heals up faster. But it's, again, there I am building up on that metaphor. I don't think but
so what are you getting at? So every year when the interns start,
it has to be that same thing about hey, trust the process. Yes, it's busy. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, we don't have an answer for everything. And what's interesting is that while we have worked very much to try to limit those experiences as much as possible, sometimes my mind goes man, it might be better for them to actually experience it and have to figure it out. And then that's a scar, because which one are you going to do? Which one are you going to allow? Because both are going to create uncomfortable or discomfort within the people that report to you. Do you create the discomfort that it's a tough conversation of being hey, this is what you have to do. We got to then figure out ways of protecting them from these realities versus well, if they don't get exposed to it, then they're not going to understand.
Yeah, so I think, Dave, if I'm hearing this all right, you're getting at when you're bringing new folks on and maybe things are brought up as a concern, hey, this was a concern, or I didn't have somewhere to sit, or somebody wasn't added to my schedule. I think that your brain has two different directions in it. Is the end goal is that you want them to learn how to go with the flow and to be successful in primary care. So the question becomes, do you support them by fixing the problem so that they can work within the system? Or do you support them by having them look at their behavior and their context and having them problem solve? Because if we solve everybody's problems for them, you do get to the point where if they go out, because the whole point of our trainees coming for their predoctoral internship and the postdoctoral fellowship is, well, the idea is so that they can go anywhere and do primary care behavioral health. And so our system is a lot more advanced than the majority of systems that are out there, especially if they're being hired to build the program.
I know.
So it's you don't, are they going to have the skill set to go build a program if they haven't experienced the difficulties on their own? Or are we just getting old and we're well, back in my day, I walked uphill both ways with no shoes on, and we're just passing down something that completely isn't necessary and saying, well, that's the only way they learn is if you go through it. And I don't have the answer to that, by the way.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. And then you think about the walked up hills both ways. When we talked to I'm sure when we were fellows under Kirk was just guys, just stop, right? It's fine, just
see the patient.
Just see the patient, right? That's what we say, in a lot of ways now. Yeah, and there was another one that my mind was going to. This is a big one. I'd love to know where your mind goes with, the scar of being in a hierarchical system and just naturally going to be not at the top.
Yeah.
You know, like that mental health or behavioral health integration might be seen as an afterthought, or, you know, and especially
that one's hard to not personalize.
That one is very, very hard to not personalize. And for us who are so passionate about this and believe in what behavioral health can really do, and well-trained BHCs, that they can truly transform not only the system that they are, but the community that system is in, like really believing in that, that's tough. And then it's tough when, you know, we've been here for 10 years. So when someone maybe tries to do that to us, we're like, all right, that's cool. Like, move on. Seeing new BHCs get exposed to that, though, and it goes back to what you were just saying there before about how much do we protect about that? How much do we have to fight with that? You know, it's and that one is almost like a never-ending one that just will always probably be there. Where's your mic?
Truly, where my mind was going was when you were talking, I had flooding into my head. I have that look on my face like, where is she right now? So many of our trainees and folks that we've worked with at consulting who've gone out and now they're like doing their own, you know, building their own program or doing their own thing, and just the things that they're getting hit in the face with.
Yeah.
And so there's this like, it's almost like, welcome.
I know.
You know, so we have somebody who goes to our system, they go elsewhere, they're starting a system, and then they message back and they're like, hey, so when you guys were getting started, like, did this thing happen? And that thing happen? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And did this thing happen? You're like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, huh. I kind of thought that those things were all worked out. It's like, no. I mean, they were a lot by the time you were there. But no, that same thing, yeah, we went through that like 7 years ago, or nope, that was 5 years ago. I feel just
that was
like,
yesterday.
Yeah, that was yesterday. Yeah. And so there is almost this camaraderie, and there's almost like this welcome, and maybe that's some of the stuff that we are trying to do with the PCBH lab, is looking back at the last decade, and then we'll be doing it for our PCBH week 4 as well. But looking back at the last decade and saying all the lessons, you know, what lessons have we learned? And I don't think that we'll be able to help people to not have wounds.
Yes.
But maybe like just a little bit less. Maybe just a little bit less.
And maybe that the wound isn't, what would the word be? It's contained, because there's an awareness of like, oh, other people have been through this.
Yeah, this is normal.
This is normal.
This is normal to feel this way. It's normal to feel attacked. It's normal to feel like you've said something 100 times. To
get brushed off,
You feel like the gaslighting thing of, again, you brought me here. You literally are paying me to do this, and you don't want me sitting in the pod. Like, and then you won't put anybody on my schedule for me. And then we have this separate system, and then I don't get as much CEU money. We actually didn't experience that one, but a lot of people do. Or we don't have the same amount of PTO, or we don't have the same amount of admin time, or we have different hours, or we're being contracted. And the list goes on and on and on of all these scars. And I know that the most recent scar that maybe that is why we did the PCBH Implementers Lab the way we did, was that we were executing PCBH that was working so good. The results, because I'm always like, get the results, have them speak for themselves. But it wasn't speaking in the way that I wanted, and the way that you wanted, the way that we wanted. And we really dug in, and we found it's because maybe we weren't packaging the results in quite the same way of saying this is primary care. So things changed a lot when we started packaging our success, not as a PCBH success, but as a primary care success. And so I know but that's the scar that I wear of like, again,
we were performing. We were doing everything that everybody said to do. We had the results even. And still,
we didn't have like a seat at the table.
Correct.
And so it wasn't until we took those results and we communicated them in a certain way did we earn a seat at the table.
Let me ask you this. Is there one or two things that you would encourage people to do that could be like a balm for these scars? And the one thing that my mind goes to immediately is like trying to always find like oddness in the work that you do.
Yeah.
You know, like this morning I was filling out credentialing paperwork for someone at the hospital. And I was like, man, I really don't want to do this, you know, and it's not a scar. I mean, maybe it's a scar of like all the admin stuff that you have to do. Like, I never thought I was going to have to do this. But the one thing that was interesting was like, oh my God, like, one, this is credentialing paperwork for someone to get credentialed at our hospital, which is a new initiative that we're going to do for our BHCs. And then the second thing was, it's like, how crazy is it? Because they asked my title and I was like, the director, the primary care behavioral health education director. And you lose that so much. I know we've talked about this regularly, that, when we were growing up in Eastern Ohio and Western PA, like we weren't, there wasn't a lot of psychologists. There wasn't a lot of, we come from like blue collar kind of, families that we take a lot of pride in.
Never heard of a BHC.
Yeah, right? We take a lot of pride in that. And so we habituate so quickly to things that we lose oddness of like, even filling out credentialing paperwork, like how cool is that? That's part of my job, that I get to do that. And whether it be data presenting or just putting your scrubs on every single morning, it's like the oddness of putting scrubs on in the morning. Trying to find oddness in every single thing that you do. I think it could be a helpful balm.
Yeah, I think we had talked about that in PCBH week 3 is the gratitude journaling.
Yeah.
As a absolute huge one. I mean, I think that what you're saying is really, really great. I think number one is just remembering that this is normal. And if you're experiencing it, probably somebody else has. Reach out on the CFHA listserv.
Yes.
Whether it's doing the mentorship program. And it might not even be, it could just be more of a healthcare thing too. It might not even be for integrated care specifically. There should be somebody that you work with who's accumulated some scars and who knows what you're talking about. And know that we carry them. And so for whatever that's worth, if it seems like we always have things together or we have a lot of successes that maybe we're putting on the listserv, just know that that's the Instagram versus reality, which we have a PCBH corner on that already. And then I agree with you so much about having that appreciation, the gratitude, remaining in the awe. And then I think patient stories and then your colleague stories. Oh, that's another good one. Celebrating in the wins and successes of your colleagues.
Yes.
And patient stories. So whether you write them down, whether on your team you share them back and forth. I know as of late in the last couple of months, we've been doing a lot of sharing with the BHC team about, hey, this patient was seen, here's what happened, here's what's going on, or these different scenarios that, and we had talked about it at the BHC meeting, at our monthly meeting. I think I asked the team, like, I need to be anchored in what are we doing all this for? What is all this pain for? And so it was story after story after story of all the stuff that people on our team, and I just sat there and I just let that sink in. And so whether you're writing the stories, you're asking other people from the stories, you're rereading the stories that you had written down in your journal somewhere, just knowing that that's why you're doing it. Inherent
within that is, and we've talked about this, like find someone to do PCBH with. I think that's a big thing. We are talking about this more, like we forgot how lucky we are that we get to do this together, and finding someone to do PCBH with. And the last thing that I would say, as you were saying about like the scars and different things, recognizing that every single person that you're working with in your health system is carrying scars, right? Like we're talking about specific PCBH scars. Like we don't know about like the scars of, well, you're starting to learn them, the scars of like CHC leadership scars and kind of things, right? Like everybody is carrying scars. And patience, as we know. And I don't just mean that, difficult things happen in their life. We know that. But just different assumptions that folks have had or situations that they've had previously. And then now they're going to make an assumption about you. And even, we're watching, what's it called? Full Swing. Yeah. For a really fun golf documentary. And the one guy, when PGA golfer had lost his mom when he was a teenager, and he went to a therapist and had a bad experience. And so he's carried that with him his entire life. And so when they wanted him to see a sports psychologist, he had all these relational frames that were built up. He carried scars for that. When really this literally, I mean, these guys have millions of dollars on the line that if they can get their mindset right, but that's how strong of a negative experience he had. And so we don't know what we're going into. So getting that engagement, going in excited with a smile and honoring where a person is, you might have an opportunity to connect with somebody to where they change their mind about healthcare. And it doesn't even have to be BHC-wise. They could have seen doctors. Anybody. They could have had a parent or a family member, and then maybe that's why they don't go to the doctor. So
I guess what I'm saying is you never know what cycle you can disrupt and help somebody's healing. And I agree with you, Dave. We can take that for our colleagues and peers as well.
And again, that example that you gave about the golfer, it wasn't personal, right? Like as if a psychologist would have seen him and he would have blown off that psychologist, it could have been very easily just to be like, oh, I'm going to take that personal. It's like he was carrying something, and very appropriately carrying something, So I really do appreciate that. So as we wrap up here, part of I think what's fun about making these videos is like we get to be a part of other people's experiences, and at least my mind hopes that this is a normalizing and validating PCBH Corner, and then also prompts people to not only reach out to us, but just reach out to other people, continuing to use the listservs that are so active about these scars, and that we can all hold this together.
It's a both and. I think it's a worthy mission.
Yeah.
And I'm up for it the large majority of the time. But like we said, we're humans, so we're going to have those moments, and being re-grounded in, again, why are we doing this? And I don't think that comes naturally. I think you're going to have some type of system, a buddy system, gratitude system. I would have all of the systems, and we do have all the systems to help us with this, because it's hard.
Primary care is messy. Primary care is where good ideas go to die. And if you're on the cutting edge,
you're going to get cut.
You're going to get cut.
And if you're on the bleeding edge, you're going to bleed.
Well, thank you as always for stopping by. We appreciate it. And talk to everybody soon.